Hi, and a very good morning for those who are watching through StreamYard and also our Facebook channel and YouTube as well. Please bear with me a moment because I'm going to be bringing in our followers on Instagram as well. So bear with me a moment while I just click on a button and let's see if that all goes through. Yep. So, well, good morning, everybody. We are live on StreamYard, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And welcome to the biggest secret, the signature credit recoupment, limited to 0.01% of the world population. First, let me introduce myself. If this is your first time you're seeing any of our presentation, my name is Simone and I'm head of the advocate department. It's great to see so many of you because I can already see so many people coming through, and there is going to be a lot of information we're going to be sharing today and also after this presentation. There are handouts included. They will be sent to all our attendees today and will be uploaded along with this presentation, because this presentation is recorded onto our platform as well. Now, for those who have registered and submitted questions, we've already gone through those questions, and you may find a lot of them will be answered throughout today's presentation. However, if you have any additional questions, fear not, they will be answered because there will be a separate Q&A section with our speaker and also with Andy Benson, who's heads up the Ross Media Group as well. There will be additional links that we'll be sharing towards the end of the presentation, but don't worry, as I said, for those who've attended today, an email will be sent out. We will ask for additional questions that you have, so there will be a separate session on that, plus your feedback, because your feedback is so important to ensure we will continually to improve our presentations week in and week out. Right, everyone, are we ready? Are you ready to rock and roll? I hope you've got pen and paper handy because lots of information will be shared today. So let me introduce you to our speaker. He is the founder and the president of the Republic of Old Souls. It's Ian Clifford. Morning, Ian. How you doing? We've got a massive audience today.
Well, it's good that we're live, and I've wanted to do this live for audiences around the world that may have only just realised that we're doing a webinar, and they can go straight to their social media platform and they can watch the webinar from there. So hopefully we'll get a lot bigger audience because a lot of people are very busy. They don't necessarily see our invitations until the last minute, and then maybe they're doing something else. But there are I think there's lots of people out there that enjoy and get a lot of value from these, and I want to spread the word to the widest possible audience. And this subject here, in my humble opinion, there is nobody on the planet over the age of majority that would be bored knowing this subject. This is one of the biggest game changers that anybody could ever learn. And I want to get that message out to a very, very wide audience. Of course, as we'll go through this, not everybody in the world can do this. And I've often had the question about that. And I remember only just recently having a very long meeting with a guy who came over from the UK to come and see me here in Cyprus. And we spoke at length about whether this process would actually undermine the United States Treasury and whether indeed this process would bankrupt the United States, which was something which he had been thinking about. And I therefore wrote a technical paper on that, which is one of the handouts. Of course, this process isn't going to bankrupt the United States. And the reason why, before we sort of get into the detail of this, and it's an anathema of mine for many, many years. the world is full of the rich and the poor, and on the basis that all of the money, let's just call it money, that's on the Monopoly Board of Commerce is created through the signature energy of the living men and women. The question I've asked for a long time is, why don't more people know about it? And how could there ever be any poverty? How could there be rich and poor if the underlying creation of the money supply is through the signature of the living men and women? How could there be rich and poor, not just men and women out there, but countries rich and poor? How is that possible? If the entire money supply is created from the energy of the people and via the signature, shouldn't everybody have access to what they need? I say yes. But of course, the cabal that runs the Monopoly Board, they don't want people to know how this system works, because more and more people knowing about this system would diminish the dystopian control agenda that they roll out all around us. So if you want to control the masses, then you've got to keep them in fear. You've got to get them to comply with tax, with debt, in those two areas, many other things as well, which I've spoken about in great detail. But if you get people afraid because they've got to pay their debt back and they've got to pay their taxes, and they think that the money supply is actually based on something of substance, then of course you can keep the masses in fear. And if people in fear are fairly easy to control, which of course is what it's all about. So for those who are seeking freedom from fear, this webinar is for you. If you want to stay in fear and you don't want to be aware of how the Monopoly Board of Commerce is financed, then if you don't want to know that, I don't know why you're here, because that's what we're going to be talking about. And then we're going to be talking about how a lot of people have researched this subject and have not understood it. And worse than that, certain people out there, Simon Goldberg is a very good example of this, that actually promote a scheme which probably will put him in jail. I speculate and I forecast that is a very high probability. And many people that have used or relied on the process that he markets could actually could even be prosecuted themselves. And if they're not prosecuted, they probably will be fined by the IRS through frivolous filing penalties. Or if they've had recoupments, which some of them have, they could be drawn back. They could be seized and taken back. And nobody that has followed that methodology has understood how this system actually works. Neither Simon Goldberg, neither the Paul McDeeb, which is the fictional character that Simon Goldberg puts forward to his members as allegedly the expert in this subject. They don't understand it. And then you've got other characters like Dan Needle, who is revered in the United Kingdom by many as being a tax expert. He was the head of tax for a prestigious law firm called Clifford Chance that is known in the circles of law firms as the Magic Circle. So there's a handful of UK firms that get to the heights of Magic Circle status, and Dan Needle was the head of tax for Clifford Chance, a Magic Circle UK law firm, who equally does not understand how this process works. And for those who've been following the dialogue between me and Dan Needle on our Telegram channels, you will see, or you would have seen, that I have challenged Dan Needle technically on every single level of how this works. And he basically has gone silent because he's unable to debunk this information that I'm going to explain to you today. So the amateurs like Simon Goldberg don't understand it. The so-called professionals like Dan Needle don't understand it. Many others around the world who've had a go at signature credit recoupment don't understand it and get themselves into difficulties. And for all of these reasons, it plays right into my hands, because as people who know me well will know, you know, if there is a complex problem to solve, I'm promising everybody on this webinar, you want to give it to me. And I will find, if there is a solution to that problem, I will find it, and I won't rest until I have. Not only will I find the solution, it's not just about finding it and putting it in a document. I actually will facilitate the rollout of that solution. Now, for those who don't know my backstory, and I'm not going to go into it because I've gone into it hundreds of times before, every single time I've come up with a solution to a big problem, and the problem of tax and debt and poverty and making ends meet is a pretty big problem in the world. Yeah, I think everybody can agree that. Every single time I've come up with a solution to big problems, the cabal has shut down the solution. This time, they can't shut it down. And I'll explain why as we go through. Basically, when you figured out how they run the monopoly board, the money side of the monopoly board, and you know that they rely on this exactly what I'm going to explain to you today for their own financing. How can they shut down a system that they actually use for themselves? So it's not a new system. I haven't invented something new that we're going to roll out that they can shut down. No, this is the system that they use. So for those people out there who ask the question, Ian, it's really interesting, but surely they're going to shut this system down. My answer is, well, if they shut this system down, they're shutting the whole money system down, because this is how the money system works. It's a bit like saying, what happens if there's no air to breathe? Well, everyone dies, yeah? But it's unlikely that they're going to shut the air system down because they need it as well. I hope I've made my point there. So this, what I'm going to explain to you today, is exactly how the Monopoly Board of Commerce works in terms of the money supply. Many people don't understand it. Many people think they understand it, but haven't done deep enough research. Many people have tried to get it to work and it hasn't worked for them, and they've moved away from it because they think it's a myth. Many people think it's unlawful to do this. Many people don't care whether it's lawful or unlawful. They have a go at it. And I'm going to try and dispel all of those myths today. This is perfectly lawful. This is exactly how it works. I'll debate anybody from anywhere about how this works technically. I have done more research on this in the last 6 months than anything else. I've written numerous technical papers, which you can find at Ecclesia Law. When people like Dan Needle won't debate you on the technical side, then you know that you're right. Because if he actually had anything that he could point to that would undermine my research, he would have already pointed to it. And we've been in a dialogue for about 6 weeks. And I've sent him all the technical research, and he never once pushes back with anything technical. He just uses other pushbacks, which are ridiculous for a Magic Circle, ex-partner of a Magic Circle law firm. Some of the pushbacks that Dan Needle and strategies that he's used, it's just like being in the playground with a load of kids. So anyway, I won't go on about that because you're not here to listen to my my interactions with Dan Needle. But it's very interesting to me that something as technical as this that is put out there, that is readily available. All my papers are open source. I don't hide any of this information. If people want to challenge it, I'm happy to debate them. Nobody's ever accepted my debate challenge. People like Dan Needle want to criticize and put blogs out and create all sorts of social media noise, criticizing me. But when you get head to head with them, they back off, which to me is very revealing. I'm actually going to answer the question, why wouldn't this bankrupt the United States Treasury? Because it was a very good question. And it's a question that revealed to me that the person asking that question doesn't understand the process of ex nihilo credit creation. If we had the opportunity to, and maybe we will one day, Professor Richard Werner, who did 16 years worth of study into how the banks create the money supply through debt, if he and I were to debate Dan Needle, we'd absolutely destroy him. Because you see, Professor Richard Werner was the guy that I started reading his research papers over 10 years ago. Because having been a money manager and then never really completely understanding where the money comes from, how does it spring into existence? When I started reading Professor Richard Werner's research papers in around about 2015, light bulbs went on for me like you couldn't believe. And you know what happened to Richard Werner? He's still telling his information to anybody who wants to listen. In fact, I was listening to him present in the I think there's a forum, there's a European Economic Forum that he's just presented about what's called CBDCs, and he does like a 45-minute presentation on how the money supply has already been, it's already digital money now, and that's what I've been saying for years as well. And the only difference between what we've already got, which is a one world digital money system, and CBDC, the C being central, he says it's something they want to do is centralize money. I say it's already there, and we're going to look at that as we go through today. So, you know, I would love to have that debate with Richard Werner. He says they want to bring in centralized money. I say it's already here, and I think I can prove it through all the research that I've put together. But someone like Richard Werner, you'd imagine that he would be interviewed by every mainstream media channel out there. You know, you'd think you'd see Richard Werner on the evening news, yeah, because he's telling you that the banks create money from your signature. You'd think that would be news that people would actually be interested in covering. Yeah, it's pretty big, isn't it? That every single mortgage, loan, credit card, every bank payment that everybody makes is actually the origins of it is your signature. You would imagine that people might be interested in that. You would imagine that all of the regulators, so-called regulators, including my friends at the FCA, who I've offered to debate this very subject with numerous times, you'd imagine that the regulators all around the world, the financial regulators, would be saying to everybody who is a consumer of banking products and investment products, do you know, just to make you aware that your signature creates the credit, and you're therefore not actually a debtor at all. You are the creditor. And all of these debt contracts that you've entered into, it's actually inverted, and you're not actually the debtor at all. You are the creditor. You'd imagine that if the regulators, who are allegedly there to protect the consumer's interests, you'd imagine that they'd want you to know that, yeah? But they don't want you to know that either. And I've offered the FCA numerous debates about this subject and other subjects, and they don't want to debate. They just decline, which is also very interesting. So it all tells me that the money system, like many systems, is a trap. And those that are trapped by it don't understand it. And today we're going to unpack it. And hopefully by the end of today's webinar, you will understand a bit more about it and how it all joins together to make up a very, very smart slavery system and how you can break free from it. So if you are interested in this subject and if you want to spread the word, we're going to talk about how you can spread the word a bit later on in the webinar. Because I honestly, as I mentioned right at the beginning of my preamble here, why would people over the age of majority who are using bank accounts not want to know this? It's astonishing to me that anybody would say, you know what, I don't want to know about that. I'm a bit bored about that. It's like not got anything of any interest for me to look at. When it's the very thing that can transform your life, I think more people would want to know about it. Let's move it on. And I think that the problem is that very few people actually have a comprehension of where the money comes from. I think a lot of people, if you ask them, where do you think the money comes from? They will give you a whole range of answers, which Professor Richard Werner actually wrote about. He calls it the 3 theories of money. And most people's theory of where the money comes from are completely wrong. There's no factual basis. There's no evidence to support it. And people don't look for the evidence to support their belief. They just take it for granted that the money supply always seems to be there. But nobody really understands, or hardly anybody seems to understand how it all springs into existence. And it's pretty simple, actually. When you, like everything, you can start off with looking at it in a very complex way and getting completely confused by it, or you can look at it in a very simple way. And the first thing that I did when I was looking into it was to establish, well, what backs the money? If I give you a piece of paper that says I owe you, £1,000 or €1,000 or $1,000, if I just wrote that on a bit of paper and gave it to you, would you trust it? Probably not. You'd probably say, I don't want that. I want you to make me a bank transfer, or I want you to send me some gold or something, send me something which I could sell. I can't sell that bit of paper, and I can't give that bit of paper to anybody else. But all of us are happy to make digital bank transactions. All of us are happy to use debit cards, credit cards, and we just trust that the digital transactions that are going to happen after we've swiped our card or typed in our PIN number in some system, we just trust it's going to all work for us, yeah? And that's because very few of us actually understand what's going on, including people like Dan Needle, who's meant to be an expert. So the money supply used to be underpinned by physical assets. That's not been the case for well over 100 years. The system of money supply is all based on the energy of the people. And they brought it about in many steps along the journey. If you unpack this and go back through the history and the origins of how all this came about, you can go all the way back to, well, you can go all the way back to Babylon. But if we start it in 1882, when the Bills of Exchange Act became English law, and then that was adopted by many countries around the world, and many people will go, well, what's that got to do with the money supply? Well, it's got a lot to do with it, because if you look at the birth certificate construct, if you go and find the birth certificate, you'll find on there that there is there's a reference number on the birth certificate, There's always a family or surname, and there is a date on the birth certificate that is the date of registration. And many people look at the birth certificate and assume that that birth certificate is them. It is actually some sort of document which is representative of them, the living man or woman. Well, of course, most people who studied this soon realised that the birth certificate is not a document that is an identification document for them. It actually says on there, don't use this as a form of identity on most birth certificates. But people don't read the wording. They just assume it's their ID and that's it. They don't look any further than that. And why would they need to, you know? So when you look at that birth certificate and you then realize what it is actually the registration of an artificial person. And the artificial person is a banker. So there you go. You, the living man, woman, are an agent for a banker. And, you know, nobody told you that, did they? Apart from me. So the living man, woman becomes the agent of the person, which is the birth certificate construct, when the living man, woman comes of age. That can be different ages in different countries. It could be 18, 21. Mostly it's 18 or 21. So suddenly the living man, woman has now become the agent for a banker. And if you know about agency, you'll understand that the agent is responsible for the principal. The principal is the birth certificate construct. And that is an artificial person. It's not, you can't, you know, indulge me for a moment, but if you were to find the birth certificate somewhere, can you have a conversation with it? Can you call it on the telephone? Can you go to dinner with it and have a chat with it? No, you can't, because it's just an artificial construct. So the birth certificate itself is just a document that is proof of the registration of an artificial person, and that artificial person is a banker, as it confirms in the Bills of Exchange Act of 1882. So if you then, if we have established that, which I think we have, then you say, well, why would they need the person to be a banker? Well, because the person, which is this artificial construct, is going to be issuing securities. Oh my God, that's a really scary word. Yeah, what the hell does that mean? So everybody on this webinar and all the other billions in the world that are over the age of majority are, unbeknown to them, issuing securities through the artificial construct of the person, the birth certificate registered entity. And all of those securities are underpinned by the energy of the living man or woman. So in order to, for the cabal that runs the monopoly board, because as I've mentioned many, many times, the living men and women are not on the monopoly board. The monopoly board is an artificial game. It is artificial because you can't step on it. You can't, you can't put your hand on it and rest on it or step on it because it's an artificial. It's like a hologram. It looks real, but it isn't real. It's just artificial. And everybody's playing this artificial game, believing it to be a real game of substance. When the substance is not on the monopoly board, the substance is the living men and women and their energy. And what's going on here is, in order to get the living men and women's energy onto the monopoly board, there has to be this artificial construct of the person. Now, in order to make it work, they had to bring in things like the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. They had to bring that in because the elite bankers needed a piece of legislation that would enable them to play this game of monopoly the way that they wanted to play it, which would ultimately enslave humanity. And that act was brought in 1913. And then, because they never do anything in a hurry, in 1933, after the Great Depression, and the boom years of the 1920s, and then you move into the 1930s 1930s, the early 1930s. James Traficant stood up in the Senate of the United States and said that the United States had gone into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And you can verify that by looking at James Traficant, Ohio Senator, 1933 House Joint Resolution, which confirmed that the United States is a bankrupt corporate entity. And you can still find it on the internet today. They've never removed it. Most people don't understand what it means. But when you understand the significance of it, it's very significant. Because that House Joint Resolution tells you that everything on the Monopoly Board that is all artificial is all in bankruptcy. So everything on the Monopoly Board is a negative. So I did an interview yesterday on ROS Media, and I explained that when you get a bill, so you get a gas bill, an electricity bill, a tax bill, what is that? It's actually a negative. They're sending you a debt because everything on the Monopoly Board is a debt, because everything on the Monopoly Board is debt-based. So it kind of changes your perception a bit, doesn't it? It's like, for those who think that they're super rich, who might have millions, maybe billions in their bank accounts, all of those millions or billions are actually negative. So that's a bit of a shock, isn't it? You know, these people that are thinking that they've got fortunes in their bank account, all of those fortunes are negative amounts. They're all debt. They all have a minus before the digits. And in order to make that system work, they had to make the whole Monopoly Board bankrupt. And it started in 1933, because in 1933, they created this huge problem, which was the Great Depression, which was an engineered problem, as most problems are, because they wanted to bring in ex nihilo credit creation, which is the signature creating the credit. But they had to have something to back the money. It used to be gold, but they got rid of that gradually up until 1971, and then it went completely. They had to replace the substance of gold with the energy of the people. So what they did was they basically took out a mortgage over the energy of the people. And every time one of the people signed a bank transfer or a mortgage contract or a credit card or a loan or any kind of transaction, the artificial birth certificate construct is issuing a security under, as confirmed in the Bills of Exchange Act of 1882. And that security is a debt. It ends up as a debt. It ends up as a negative value. And of course, the positive value is the energy that is being transferred onto the Monopoly Board, because the way that the Monopoly Board works is that a mortgage is taken out over the energy of the people. And the energy is transferred onto the Monopoly Board as a debt. And it's the debt that is traded as securities. And if you think of, well, you know, what is a debt? Let's just keep it really simple, right? If I said to everybody on this webinar, I'm happy to lend everyone on this webinar $1,000. Do you think I would lend $1,000 and not want to get the interest on the $1,000? Do you think I would lend everybody $1,000 and say, you keep it for as long as you like, you never have to pay any interest on it, I'm okay, don't worry about it? Or do you think I would want to charge interest on all of these loans that I'm giving out to everybody on this webinar, everybody in the world? No, I'm pretty sure if I was going to do that, I would want everyone who's borrowing to pay interest. Isn't that what banks do? If I was operating a bank and lending everyone $1,000, do you not think I'd want interest? But the interesting question is, where does the interest come from? That's another question that a lot of people haven't thought about. But let's imagine we don't need to know where the interest comes from. Let's just imagine that everybody on this webinar and everybody else said, yeah, I'll have that loan here, give it to me, I'll have that 1,000. And they all started paying interest. Do you think I could sell that to an investment bank like Goldman Sachs? So if I was a bank and everybody borrowed $1,000 from me and paid interest, do you not think I would be able to sell that whole business structure with future cash flows coming in on all the interest to Goldman Sachs and say to Goldman Sachs, hey, I've got millions of people here that have borrowed $1,000 from me, my bank, and they're all paying me interest. I want to sell that to you, Goldman Sachs. How much will you give me for it? And the number crunchers at Goldman Sachs will go away and they'll come up with a value of all of that future cash flow of the interest payments. So let's imagine that it's just to keep the numbers simple, right? Let's imagine that I lent everyone on this webinar and a load of other people $1 billion. And there were interest to pay on that billion for the next 30 years. And let's suppose that there was 2 billion of interest commitment to pay. So I lent $1 billion from my bank, and there were 2 more billion of interest commitments that everybody who took the loan was going to pay over the next 30 years. What do you think Goldman Sachs would pay for that whole structure? Are they going to pay $1 billion for it? Are they going to pay 2 billion for it? 3 billion for it? Maybe they'll pay 4 billion for it. What I've just described to you is what's going on every day of every week, of every month, of every year. The investment banks are buying debt and they're trading it because there is an interest rate that is going to be paid on the debt. And the old boys at Goldman Sachs, they like trading debt because that's pretty much what they do. So you see, when you make a bank payment, go and sign up for a mortgage, sign up for a credit card or a loan, what's really going on is that because the entire monopoly board is bankrupt, you can only put debt onto the monopoly board, and you can only do that with your signature. And then what's going to happen is that debt that you put on the monopoly board there will be an interest to pay on that debt. And the bank that you sign up with the account with, the mortgage, loan, credit card, bank account, whatever it is, that account is known as a clearing bank account. And they're going to take your signature. They're going to create this debt, which doesn't belong to them, by the way, even though they claim it does. And then they're going to sell it to the gods of the universe, which is the investment banks that all operate in Wall Street. I've been to most of them because I've done lots of investment banking stuff in my past. I know what they're like. Some of the most arrogant people you're ever going to meet, because they're the gods of the universe, because they're trading your energy. And they don't even know what they're doing, because even the gods of the universe don't understand exactly how this works, because nobody shows them. But that's basically what they're doing. They're trading the energy of the living men and women that put the debt onto the artificial monopoly board. And because the whole monopoly board is bankrupt, the debtors, which is the birth certificate construct, have got to pay interest, got to pay tax, got to pay the debt back. And the bankruptcy trustee, which is the United States Treasury, has to pay the creditors. Because if you understand what's going on in a bankruptcy, the trustee in bankruptcy has to represent the creditors. Well, who are the creditors? We've established earlier that the monopoly board is artificial. It's all debt-based, and they're using our energy to run the money around the board, which is all debt. So if it's all debt, and if we are providing the energy that goes on the monopoly board, are we not the creditors? Is not the living man or woman the creditor? The living, breathing being, is that not the creditor to everything on the monopoly board? Well, I say it is. And I don't just say it, I can prove it. So if they're using our energy on the monopoly board, and if you can't pay for anything because there's no money of substance, all you can do is issue a new debt. So that's a good game, isn't it? Let's imagine that you had a bonfire in your garden, and somebody came round and said, "Hey, I don't like you burning that bonfire. Can you put it out, please?" And you said, "Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go and get my can of petrol from my garage, and I'm going to go and douse the bonfire with my petrol, because I think that might put the bonfire out." Well, that's exactly what's going on when people pay off a debt. You can only pay off a debt with another debt, and you can't pay it off at all because there's only debt on the monopoly board. So that's like saying, I'm going to go and put the bonfire out with some petrol. Isn't it going to make the bonfire bigger? Isn't that why money, the so-called debt of the world, just gets bigger and bigger and bigger? It never goes down, does it? Only ever goes up. Because it's like pouring petrol on a bonfire. And yet these alleged experts keep telling everybody, "Oh, vote for me and I'll reduce the debt." Yeah, if they're a politician. Well, how are they going to do that when there's only debt on the monopoly board? It's only ever going to go up, isn't it? Have you ever wondered how the governments finance the let's look at the pandemic from a few years ago. Suddenly there's all this new money available. You can have funding from the government, yeah? You can underpin your business, you can go on furloughs, the trillions was created. Well, where did it come from? It all came from the energy of the people, right? And what they've done is they've created what's called a usufruct arrangement, which basically means that the energy is being used by those that run the monopoly board, and the debtors, which is every entity on the monopoly board, has to pay interest, and also, crucially, has to pay tax. Because tax and debt are largely the same thing, right? So you imagine that every single entity on this monopoly board, artificial game, is either paying debt or tax or both. And the taxes have to be paid to who? If it's to do with the debt contracts, these securities that are being traded by the gods of the universe, they have to pay tax to the United States Treasury for the use of your energy. Well, who does that tax belong to? Does it belong to the United States Treasury? Does it belong to someone else? Or does it belong to you? Because it's tax for the use of your energy. Let's imagine that you all owned a property and you wanted to rent it out. You had no debt on it. You just had this property and you wanted to rent it out, right? So you did. You put your rental property out there and you got some tenants to come in there and rent your property. But then you looked in your bank account and you thought, well, where's the rent? I want the rent. Where is it? It's not, I don't see it coming in my bank account. So you look into it and you realize the tenants that are renting your property are paying the rent to someone else. Do you think you'd be happy with that? Would you just sit back and say, oh, never mind, I don't really need the rent, I'll just let the other guys take it, you know, it's my house, but I don't care about the rent really, I'll just let other people have it? That's what you're doing every day, every week, every month, every year. You have rented your energy to other people who are paying rent, taxes to the United States Treasury, but you're never claiming the taxes back. You wouldn't do it on a property, would you? But you're doing it with your energy all the time. So that's the illusion of the money, the money of substance illusion. There is no substance behind it. It's just your energy. And you don't understand how it works because nobody explains it. And when you get it in your head, it's like, wow, how have I been deceived for this long? Well, it's pretty clever deception, yeah? So you shouldn't blame yourself for not getting it. Next slide. So, you know, let's look at this again, right? So you've got the living man, woman, right? It's living, it's breathing, it has an energy. I say that energy is consciousness. And they know that those that run the board, the cabal that runs the monopoly board, this artificial game that we're all playing, as the agent for the player piece. So the player piece is the person, the birth certificate construct. The living man or woman is the agent for that player piece. All the troubles, all the problems are caused by agency. The living man or woman is the agent for the player piece, which is the person, the birth certificate construct. And there is a separation of those two, but there's also a joinder of those two. And the joinder is the law of agency. So you see, all of those out there that are saying, well, you know, I'm not that person, that birth certificate entity, that's not me. I'm not responsible for what it's the contracts it's got itself into, the legislation that it has to comply with, the taxes that it has to pay. No. Don't talk to me about, you know, that. I have already done my research, and that birth certificate entity is not me. So all I've got to do is tell anybody who's pressuring me that birth certificate entity is not me, and I'm not responsible for what's going on with it. Well, the problem is you are, because you're an agent for the birth certificate construct, and that's where all the problems are, right? The agency makes the living man or woman liable for all the issues and problems and contracts and taxes and debts and legislations and prison sentences and everything else that's going on against the artificial construct, the artificial person. And there's millions of people running around thinking all they've got to do is say, no, I'm not that birth certificate entity, so therefore don't bother me with your debt, your tax, your prison sentence, your court case, because it's not me. It doesn't matter, because the living man or woman is the agent. So they've trapped us through agency, but also the benefit of that agency is that the living man or woman is the creditor to all of that debt that the birth certificate construct, as a banker, has put on the monopoly board. So there's a curse and a benefit all rolled into one. And when you unpack it the way I have and looked at it from all different sides of this complex equation, it tells me one thing. If you want to beat those that play the game or that control the game of Monopoly, if you want to beat them, you've got to play the game better than they play it. So let's all imagine, right, that we were all going to go to a chess tournament, and we're all thinking we're pretty good at chess. Yeah, we've been playing chess for a long time. And we all went to the chess tournament. And we thought we completely understood the game, right? But the game that we've all been playing is checkers. It's not actually chess at all. So we turn up at the chess tournament thinking we're going to do quite well. And then they put the board in front of us and put all the pieces on the board. And we go, well, that's not the game I've been playing. I've been playing the game with these little round shapes. And the tournament arranger is going to say, well, that's not chess, that's checkers. We play chess here. So unless you know the rules, you better go and study them if you're going to play in this tournament. Yeah. And that's what's going on, guys. We've been playing checkers and they've been playing chess. So if you want to beat them at chess, you better know the rules, yeah? Because on the Monopoly board, it's a game of complex rules that most of us don't understand, right? Next slide. The birth certificate itself is really, it's just a confirmation of the fact that the person is a banker. I'm not going to go too deeply into this. It doesn't really matter, but there are some clues here, right? If you look at the every birth certificate entity, the person has a social insurance number. That's a bit of a reveal, right? Because the social insurance number is telling you that it is a taxable entity. It is a debtor. Having a social insurance number is an illustration of the fact that that entity is a debtor entity. A social insurance number is a giveaway. And it's also pretty much saying that although it doesn't tell you this, and you don't get a letter in the door when you come of age of 18 or 21 that says, oh, by the way, this birth certificate construct is now going to be fully operational as a banker. So good luck with your issuance of all these securities that you're going to issue. Nobody tells you that, do they? And they don't tell you that the social insurance number is a reference number for the banker as the person, as the artificial construct. I don't think they really want you to know that, do they? And you see, they also don't tell you that every time that you sign for a transaction with a clearing bank, that you are creating that credit that underwrites the bank payment, the mortgage, the loan, the credit card. They don't give you a manual that explains that, do they? Next slide. And Professor Richard Werner is probably the go-to resource if you want to really understand about ex nihilo credit creation, which means money out of nothing, credit springing into existence through debt. So you make you issue your promise to pay in the future, your transference of your energy, your deposit of energy, and the bankers say thank you for that deposit. We're going to issue a debt equal to the value of your deposit, and that's the security that they're going to sell to the investment banks in New York. So imagine that you were at a dinner party and you were surrounded by bankers at this dinner party. I mean, heaven forbid, not that many people would want to go on that dinner party. But anyway, let's imagine you were at this dinner party. And you said to the guys at the table, I understand you're all bankers, yeah? And they say, yeah, we're bankers. Can you explain to me how you make loans? And they will say, yeah, what we do is we take deposits from our customers and we lend them out. And you go, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? If you get in, people depositing their money with you and you lend it out, then you must be like you must justify the interest you're charging, yeah? Because, you're lending out and sometimes people don't pay you back, and therefore you're taking a bit of a risk, aren't you? Because you've got to pay the people back who made the deposits. But if some of the borrowers don't pay you back, your bank's taking a risk, yeah? And your bank would therefore justifiably charge interest on the loan because it's taking a bit of a risk. Is that right, how you do it? And the bankers will go, yeah, that's how we do it. We take deposits in, we lend them out. Some people don't pay us back, so we have to charge interest. We've got to give interest to the people making the deposits, and we've got to charge interest on the debt, on the loans that we're making. And sometimes people don't pay us back. You know what we do if people don't pay us back? Oh yeah, what do you do if people don't pay you back? Oh, we take them to court and we take their assets from them. Yeah, we get them in the foreclosure court, and they never win there because, you know, we've always got the contracts and we've got the charge over the assets. So we can always take their houses, their factories, their hotels, their cars, because we've got a charge over the asset, yeah? And you say to the bankers, well, that sounds like a pretty good business to me. Well, what they don't tell you is those deposits are not pre-existing. Those deposits are signatures. Those deposits are brand new promises to pay. They're not deposits in the sense that the bankers believe them to be. They are brand new promises to pay. So who would like this business? Why don't we all go and set up a bank, yeah? We don't need any money. All we need is a license. Yeah, so anybody fancy this? So we go and get a bank, we get a license. We don't need any money. All we've got to do is issue loans to our customers, right? So we go and advertise everywhere that come to our bank. We've got the best loan package in the world, right? But we don't need any money. All we're going to do is get our customers to sign contracts with us. And then we can take those signed contracts and we can create credit ex nihilo, and then we can send it back to all of our customers and charge them all interest on money we never had in the first place. Is anybody out there fancy that as a business? That's banking for you. Now, the problem is that they won't give you or I or anybody else probably on this webinar a license. Because the license that you need to be a banker is that you can take those promises to pay and show them as an asset on your balance sheet. And then you can match them with a liability. And they don't give that license out to very many people. You've got to be one of the elites in the cabal to get that license. So that's how banking works, and that's how ex nihilo credit works, right? They just take the deposit, which is the energy, and they match it with a liability on the other side of their balance sheet. And they can only do it because they've got a banking license that enables them to do that. But, and the very last word, or in bold, nominee role. Every bank that is sitting on the monopoly board is operating as a nominee. A nominee is a fiduciary, it's a trustee. A nominee for who? A nominee for you, the living man or woman. And that's going to feature a bit more as we go through. Next slide. So probably unbeknown to you, every mortgage, loan or credit card or bank payment that you've ever made is packaged up and put into bonds. So bonds are basically a collection of contracts, debt contracts, all put into a bond structure with a prospectus. So the investment banks can trade a portfolio of debt, lots of debt contracts, all bundled together, put into a structure that with an issuance of what's called a prospectus. It's like the Bible of the investment, with a reference number for that structure, which is a bundle of debts all put into a portfolio of debt. And those structures have all got a reference number. And in most cases, it's called a CUSIP number, CUSIP. But it doesn't have to be a CUSIP number. There are other reference numbers for debt securities. That's not one debt, that's lots of debt from lots of different borrowers, allegedly, you know, let's call them borrowers, all bundled together into these pools. Watch the Big Short, the movie The Big Short with Brad Pitt and others, and they'll explain to you what's going on with debt securities, mortgage-backed securities, credit default swaps, credit default obligations, all manner of names for these structures, right? And the investment banks are trading those because you can buy and sell them and make money on them. And you can also use them to what's called hypothecate. You can create, you can multiply the amount of the effect of that credit, that debt, by using these structures. If you're an investment banker, you can't do it if you're not, because the investment bankers have got a different license as well, right? Which is why they think they're gods of the universe. And what is going on with all of these securities is that they're being traded for profit, and they're also being used for hypothecation, which is the expansion of the value of the credit. And the investment banks make fortunes on them. And when they make fortunes on these securities, they have to pay taxes to the United States Treasury for the use of your energy. And they are known as withholding agents. And then we get into this word or this phrase called original issue discount, which a lot of people don't even understand what it is, and why would they? Yeah. So if you issue a security, you normally issue it at a price. It might be $100, it might be $1 million, it could be $1 billion, and it has a future value because of all that interest that you're going to receive. So if you issue a bond and it has a future value, it also has a present value. It has a today value and it has a tomorrow value. And the difference between the today value and the tomorrow value is there is a calculation that will determine its today's value based on its tomorrow's value. So if you know tomorrow's value, you can discount it back to today's value. That's original issue discount. And guess what? When you issue a security by making a signature, the value of the issue of that security is zero. How can it be a positive value? It can't be. So the tomorrow value is very high, the today value is zero. And the difference between the tomorrow value and the today value, the investment banks have to pay tax. And that tax is under the original issue discount modules and schedules. You see, people like Dan Needle say, oh, no, if you buy a security for $1 million and, you know, there's some taxes that you've got to pay on because you've paid some taxes on the security and you've overpaid your taxes, therefore you've got withheld federal tax that you can reclaim. People like Dan Needle, who don't understand how the ex nihilo credit works, they think that is original issue discount. If you go on the internet and say, what is original issue discount? It will tell you that you can discount your securities if you're investing in them. And if you've overpaid your taxes, you can fill out an original issue discount form and you can get your withheld taxes back. That's what it's going to tell you on the internet. It's not going to tell you about ex nihilo credit. It's not going to tell you that every signature is a zero value today value, and all the tomorrow values are generating taxes which belong to you. Next slide. And that's the zero cost. So you see the original issue discount basically is the amount of taxes being paid on these securities, which cost nothing to create. It says there's a zero cost to create them. but they all have a high future value because of the interest that is being paid on them. And when you discount those back, and if you're in the accounting department of an investment bank, you'll be paying taxes based upon the use of that energy. But you're not going to put down on your tax return, there's a guy over in the UK who made some bank payments, who got a mortgage or a credit card or a loan, and we're paying taxes on that guy's energy. So let's put that in our disclosures, and let's make that known to everybody that that's what we're doing here really, is we're paying taxes on the use of all of these guys' energies that's out there. They're not going to tell you that. What are they going to do? They're going to create what's called omnibus accounts. They're going to create accounts that they pay taxes under, where they can disguise the fact that they're paying taxes on the use of your energy. And that's called omnibus accounts or omnibus tax reporting. Next slide. And guess what they do? They pay taxes to the United States Treasury on a tax module from their omnibus accounts, which is difficult to figure out what these accounts actually represent. And it's called the 945 tax module. And you may have heard, you may not have done. I used to have my financial services companies in America, and they're always talking about the non-payroll or the non-farm payroll and all this payroll stuff they talk about as the amount of taxes that the United States Treasury's received, non-payroll withholding or non-farm payroll, they call it in many ways. And a lot of people think, well, what are they talking about? All they're talking about is all the taxes the United States Treasury is receiving every year, right? And there are many, many tax modules. So imagine that you were an investment bank. You're not going to just pay tax as one under one item. You're going to pay taxes under all different activities that your investment bank's been involved in. Well, one of the things that the investment banks are involved in is the use of your energy and the trading of your energy. And they pay taxes under this 945 tax module related to the rental of your energy. So go back to that example where I said, okay, if you had a house and you rented it out, but the rent didn't come to you, it went to somebody else. Your tenant in this example is the investment bank, and they are paying taxes to the United States Treasury that belong to you. But the investment bank doesn't tell you that, and nor does the United States Treasury. They just think that you forgot to claim it, which is why it's abandoned. And you see, when you figure out that all of this information is tracked through computer systems, which is what I have figured out, and you can build your own algorithm that tracks all of the credit from every transaction, no matter where it's going on in the world, with only a couple of exceptions. You can then track the clearing bank, the deposits, the signatures, the energy that's being transferred onto the monopoly board. You can track it through every clearing bank, thousands of clearing banks in the world, into the investment banks, which is a much smaller number, into the individual securities, these bundles of securities, and you can identify exactly what the banks are doing with the signature energy. And you can also calculate how much taxes the investment banks are paying under their 945 tax modules, which, by the way, is exactly what the United States Treasury does when it's evaluating whether somebody qualifies or some entity qualifies for a recoupment of their abandoned energy taxes. They run the same sort of algorithm that we've run. Next slide. So here's some examples. HSBC, Lloyd, NatWest, JP Morgan, Bank of NY Mellon, that's New York Mellon. And this is some taxes that have recently been paid between 2022 and 2025. This is the annual taxes on the 945 tax modules. This is where the investment banks are actually admitting that they're paying taxes on your energy, because this is what this 945 tax module is about. But they're not going to tell anybody that what this is, yeah? Because they don't want you to know. Next slide. So in the invitation for this webinar and on other documents and things, I've said that there's 200 billion of a tax reservoir that we could be recouping. The men and women, the living men and women, could be recouping up to 200 billion of taxes a year. And that is because the 945 tax module has a priority over all other taxes that the investment banks have paid. So let me give you an example. JP Morgan Chase has paid 37.16 billion in taxes to the United States Treasury. I think it's in 2025. That's the figures from last year. Anybody feel sorry for JP Morgan Chase? I don't think so. They can't really plead poverty, can they? Now, let's suppose that out of that 37.16 billion of taxes they've paid to the United States Treasury, let's imagine that 1 billion was on their, they paid it on their 945 tax module. Let's suppose that we had, we'd set up the recoupment of the taxes, and let's suppose we had 10 billion of taxes that we're looking to recoup through our nominee tax filings, which I'll come to in a moment. What we're going to do, JP Morgan has paid 1 billion on their 945 tax module, but we've got claims in for 10 billion. Are we just going to go, well, we're just going to have to tell everybody that they can't have their recoupment. They can only, because the JP Morgans have only paid 1 billion on their 945 tax module. So we're just going to have to forget the other 9 million? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to tell the IRS, the United States Treasury, to transfer the 9 billion from JP Morgan's 37.16 billion, because the 945 tax module has a priority. It is has the highest priority for the tax recoupment. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to go back to my property example. You own a property and you've rented it out, and you're getting, it's a big property, you're going to get $10,000 a month in rent, right? So there you are, expecting $10,000 in rent every single month. But in this example, the tenants are actually paying you $2,000 a month. And they're paying $8,000 a month to somebody else. What are you going to do? Are you going to accept that? Well, I just accept the $2,000 a month and forget the $8,000 that I'm not getting? Or are you going to get in touch with the tenants to say, hey, the agent that is only sending me $2,000 a month, and I should be getting $10,000 a month. I want you to make sure that you, make the whole $10,000 a month rent available to me. And the tenant's going to say, yeah, but we paid a lot more than, a lot more. We've actually paid the $10,000 a month to the agent. And if the agent's not sending you the full 10,000, they're sending 8,000 to somebody else, you better have a word with the agent. Well, who's the agent in this story? The agent is the United States Treasury, yeah? because they've received the whole rent in my example of 10,000, but they've only sent you 0. Or maybe they've sent you 2,000 of the 10,000 in my example. What are you going to do? You're not going to say, hey, I want the 10,000. Well, that's exactly what's going on here. The 945 tax module has a priority because the creditor, the supplier of the energy, has a priority as the creditor. So the taxes that are due on the 945 module, if there's not enough in that tax module, you're going to command the IRS to transfer over taxes from other tax modules of the taxpayer. In this case, JP Morgan. So if there was 10 billion expected to be recouped and there was only 1 billion available on the 945 tax module, you're going to command, your trustee and your electronic filing officer is going to command the IRS to transfer 9 billion from another tax module onto the 945 tax module. And you'd be lawfully an entitlement to do that because the 945 tax module has the priority. So let's suppose that every single year, on average, there's 200 billion of taxes paid by the taxpayers, which is the investment banks in these examples, and we wanted to recoup the whole amount. So we had 0.01% of the world population that's over the age of 35 and under 65, all doing recoupments of $200 billion a year. Because that's what we're talking about. Do you think that the United States Treasury is going to itself go bankrupt? No. Why? Because they can do what they're doing at the moment. They can just create currency out of thin air, which is what they've always been doing. And whether they receive the taxes of 200 billion or not makes no difference to the United States Treasury, because if they need some more money to finance their budget, whatever that budget is, they can just print it. So it ain't going to make any difference to the United States Treasury. Remember, this is not real. It's just ledgers. It's not pieces of gold or silver that are moving around here. It's just ledgers. So to answer the question of the guy who came over to see me a few weeks ago, isn't this going to bankrupt the United States Treasury? And surely they're going to have a big problem with what you're doing. No, they won't. And now I reckon there's 200 billion a year, based on all the research that I've done, that is available for recoupments. So if you want to recoup your share of it, you better get going and start it off. Because after a while, there won't be any more slots available. Next slide. Now you see, people like Simon Goldberg and other people who don't understand what it is they're doing or don't even bother to look into it, they will not know, because they either don't read it or they read it and don't understand what it means, which is probably more likely to be the case. IRS publication 1212 is the only thing that you really need to study if you want to understand how to lawfully recoup taxes from the 945 tax module. You can't do it unless the entity that is filing for those taxes back is a creditor. You can't use the birth certificate construct, i.e. the person, and file tax returns as a person and expect to receive recoupments without problems. And the reason is very simple. The person that is the birth certificate construct has been created and registered to the cabal, and it's theirs. So look at the birth certificate registration. If it's registered to the cabal, then it pretty much is under their control, yeah? So how can that entity, which is under their control, get tax rebates when it is a debtor and it belongs to and it's controlled by the cabal, which is why they've registered it in the first place? So what you have to do is you have to create a separate player piece on the monopoly board, and that player piece is a grantor trust, which has a tax reference number, but it is a special, it's a special entity that has huge exemptions coming with it, tax exemptions. And once you've created that grantor trust, and then you file from that grantor trust as the nominee for the true creditor. So the true creditor is a living man or woman, yeah? That's the origins of the signature. The energy comes from the living man or woman. And the grantor trust has been established as a nominee for the true creditor. The true creditor cannot step on the monopoly board, because remember, the monopoly board is artificial. So all it can do, the living man, woman, all it can do is put a new player piece on the monopoly board. That player piece is the grantor trust. The grantor trust is not a debtor entity. It is a creditor entity, because it's representing the holder in due course of the credit, which is the living man or woman. And it's not registered to the cabal. So it can file tax returns as a creditor, and it can correct the record, the ledgers that the United States Treasury is running, as a creditor. And any taxes being paid on the energy now belong to the grantor trust as a nominee for the creditor, the living man or woman. And the investment bank that's paying the taxes, they are then paying the taxes not to the United States Treasury for them to keep them. They're paying the taxes to the United States Treasury, who have to release those taxes to the actual creditor, which is the 98 series grantor trust. Perfectly lawful. Which is probably why Dan Needles stopped debating me on this, because he may have actually figured out that what I put together is lawful and it's the way it works. Next slide. And it's all about 1212, IRS publication 1212. And this is, if you don't know what all these reference numbers actually mean, right? And who would do? In the United States, they have something called the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC. It's a book, literally, it's bigger than a phone book, of securities law. And that is what the whole United States system on the monopoly board runs on, the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, which originally was Lex Mercatoria, which was the law merchant, as some people call it. It became the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. It is the law of securities. So publication 1212 is out of that book of law of securities. So if anybody's going to say that this is unlawful, that's because they don't understand that publication 1212 is part of the law. It's 100% compliant, what I've just explained. Next slide. And you see, a lot of people say, whoa, well, when you start doing tax recoupment, isn't that going to cause the banks a big problem? Because they're going to have to pay more taxes, yeah? They're not going to like that, Ian. They're going to object to that. They're going to close you down because the banks don't want to pay more taxes, and they're going to all get together and close you down, Ian. It doesn't make any difference to the banks, because the amount of taxes they're paying doesn't change. There's no difference to them whether you're recouping your abandoned credit, which is taxes, or not, because they're paying the tax to the United States Treasury anyway. You're not increasing their tax bills. They've already paid it. All you're doing is getting the United States Treasury to redirect what's rightfully yours to your grantor trust. Doesn't have any negative effect on the banks at all. They won't even notice it. Because I had somebody ask me recently, oh, Ian, you know, how do we receive our recoupments? Don't you have to open a bank account for the trust? And I said, yeah, you do. Well, when the banks realise that the account is going to be recouping the taxes that they've paid, they're not going to like that. They're going to close the bank accounts down, aren't they? I said, why will they close the bank accounts down? Oh, because they have to pay more taxes, and then they realise that the taxes that they're paying the Treasury have gone up, and then we're all getting our tax rebates through these bank accounts. They're going to close the bank accounts down, aren't they? Well, they're not going to close the bank accounts down if it doesn't make any difference to them and it's good business to run those bank accounts, is it? Again, you see, people who don't understand the subject come up with these, it doesn't work, someone's going to shut it down narrative, because they don't understand how it works. It doesn't make any difference to the banks at all. It's just a redirection of taxes. That's it. Next slide. And the cross-modular transfer, and this is a really interesting one, right? Let's suppose that you are entitled to your grantor trust of $1 million. It's been confirmed. You've had a wages and tax transfer. It confirms that there is a $1 million recoupment coming to your grantor trust. But for some reason, the IRS don't pay out. They don't pay that 1 million to the grantor trust. And the reason why they might not do it is because there isn't enough taxes on the 945 module for them to finance it. So as I explained earlier, even though your trust is entitled to $1 million, there might not be enough taxes paid to finance that on the 945 tax module. So the trustee that you've employed and the electronic reporting officer, the licensed tax preparer, is going to command the IRS under the authority of Revenue Procedure 2002/26 to command the IRS to move sufficient taxes onto the 945 module. Again, Revenue Procedure 2002/26 is part of the Uniform Commercial Code. Cross-modular transfer. It's a lawful right of the creditor to command that. And if the IRS run their algorithm, which they do on every one of these, by the way, and there's not enough taxes on the module, they're going to freeze the recoupment because there's not enough taxes to fund it on the 945 module, which is why we run our algorithm and make sure there's enough taxes on each tax module, the 945 tax module of each investment bank, so that we don't have the freeze of the recoupment. Because we've already figured it out. We've already looked into it. Our algorithm's already calculated how much tax has already been paid on the 945 tax module before we put in the claim to draw it down for the grantor trust, so that there shouldn't be any 8-10 algorithm freezes. Next slide. And this is the AI system that we use for this. It basically is looking at the deposits that have been made into the clearing banks. It tracks the signature credit all the way through into the investment banks, into each investment bank, a bond, a security under all the right reference numbers. It figures out exactly where that abandoned credit tax is resting. And it also calculates the values of all of the tax modules, 945 tax modules, and all the other tax modules of all the investment banks. It's a pretty powerful piece of kit. You can't really do this on the scale that we're doing it unless you've got this kind of information, and you can't do it manually, because imagine how much research you're going to have to do to figure all that out. But an algorithmic system that's got access to millions and millions of bits of data can figure all this out. And this is one of the uses of AI, which I don't like AI, but if you use it for your advantage, then I do like it. Next slide. Now, there's actually a mistake on this slide. It should say recoupment, not recruitment. So that's a typo. It kind of means the same thing though, recruitment and recoupment. So it's, we can let the media team get away with that one. The first thing that you need to make sure is that there's enough taxes on the 945 tax module. Once you know that, then you can file a 1099 OID, and I say you can file, the grantor trust, through an electronic filing officer that's got a license to file electronically with the IRS. You've appointed a trustee of the grantor trust that's also recognised by the IRS as a professional trustee. You then verify that there is sufficient taxes on each of the investment bank's 945 tax modules, and if there isn't, you move it over by that cross-modular transfer. Then you should get a wages and tax transcript in, which is what we had last year, the $600 million of confirmed wages and tax transcripts that we had up until the sabotage that happened in September of last year, were all confirmed, having been through all of these steps, right? Once you get the wages and tax transcript in, then you file the trust, the tax preparer files the 1041, which is the tax return. Once the 1041 tax return's been filed, then, and it's also given the IRS the bank account to receive those funds in. So that's the grantor trust bank account, and it's going to be under $1 million. It's what's called ACH electronic transfer, and over $1 million, it's a FedWire transfer. And all of that information is electronically filed with the IRS by the tax preparer, who's got a license to file all this information, licensed by the IRS to file all this information. So if you add all that together, you're talking about a minimum timeline of about 4 months, more likely to be 6 months. If there are problems, it could be longer than 6 months. Yesterday I did an interview. It's an hour and a half where I broke it down even more granular than this. The exact timeline from A through Z. It's on our ROS media channel. I've put it up on Telegram. It's available. We'll send the link out. Because every single webinar we do that talks about recoupment, the question that we always get is, Ian, how long does it take? Well, I've answered it on an hour and a half interview, broken it down every single step from A through Z. Next slide. And I mentioned this earlier. You see, if what we were doing was unlawful, how is it that banks, major US banks, why would they open bank accounts knowing exactly what we're doing if they thought it was unlawful? Do you think they would? Do you think they would risk their banking license by opening up thousands of bank accounts if what we're doing is unlawful? I don't think so. Well, I know so. In no way would they do it. So the whole thing that we're doing is disclosed to them before they open the bank accounts. And they're opening the bank accounts for a professional trust company called Ecclesia Trustees, which, by the way, I published a paper on in our Telegram channels on yesterday, because somebody challenged whether Ecclesia Trustees could be reliably, could be relied upon as a trust company, and will it be able to satisfy the banks as a trust company or a trust company entity. So I wrote a whole paper on it and published it yesterday. In Wyoming, it absolutely qualifies as a trust company because there are various exemptions that enable it to qualify. And it's all in my research paper I published yesterday. And the banks will accept the Ecclesia trustees as a professional trustee, knowing that there's also a professional tax filing entity, an ERO, licensed tax preparer, knowing that the whole process is being disclosed and declared and explained to the bankers. That's why they open bank accounts for this structure. They certainly wouldn't do it if the structure was unlawful. Next slide. Now, a lot of people have said, well, you know, kind of get all that in, but where am I going to get my hands on the recoupments? Yeah, you know, what's the structure of that? How does that work? Well, this is why we have the Asset Fortress Protocol, which is the private treasury. So you set up an Asset Fortress Protocol. It's another grantor trust. It's not registered to the cabal. The grantor is the birth certificate construct. The beneficiary is you as a living man or woman of that Asset Fortress Protocol as a grantor trust. It can receive the recoupments from the tax filing grantor trust. So it will get 100% of the recoupments received into it. So if there's $1 million of recoupment expected, the Asset Fortress Protocol will receive $1 million. No deductions. It will then make a donation to the OSN Nation, which is the OSN Foundation, to finance our freedom plan. Again, I've published a document on that in the last few days. How we're going to finance our sovereign nation freedom plan with all of the independent infrastructure that is required from the 20% donation that is made from all of the Asset Fortress protocols. And then in the next tax filing process, that 20% is recouped. So it doesn't cost the membership anything to finance the freedom plan and the OSN Nation. I've heard all sorts of people saying, oh, well, you know, Ian's doing well, isn't he? He's getting 20% of my recoupments. He's going to go and buy another Lamborghini with that. I never had Lamborghinis, by the way. I like Aston Martins. But I'm not buying Lamborghinis or Aston Martins with it. 20% doesn't go to me. 20% goes to the OSN Foundation in Panama for the purposes of investing in a sovereign nation and its infrastructure. And it doesn't cost the members anything, zero, because they get that 20% back in the next year's tax filing. I hope it's understood. I hope people comprehend that when I've developed these solutions, I'm not trying to fleece people. I'm just playing Monopoly at an advanced level. Next slide. So now I'm going to do the Dickens story, right? So imagine in a pub, there is two guys in a pub. And you're not going to believe this, but those two guys are Simon Goldberg and Ian Clifford. And we're sitting in a pub and we're having a chat about abandoned credit recoupment, signature credit recoupment. And there's a third guy in this pub sitting at the table. And he says to Simon, I understand that you're doing signature credit recoupment, Simon. Simon says, yeah, I'm doing that. But don't tell anybody because I haven't got a license to do it. And then the guy says to me, Ian, I understand you're doing it, Ian. How are you doing it? Well, I say, I'm not actually doing it. We've got a professional tax filing license holder who does that for our members. So I'm not actually doing any filings, but the process is being done through a licensed tax preparer with a license from the IRS to do these tax filings. Oh, okay, right. And then the guy says to Simon Goldberg, so how do you actually file your tax returns then, that you're not actually doing, by the way, because you said you weren't really doing them, but you are doing them really? Oh, well, what I do, Simon says, is I get all of my members to send in their details, their passports and their tax reference numbers, the ITIN number for the birth certificate, construct the person, and I get them to send in all their bank statements and all of this other information. And I pretend that I'm not actually doing anything with that, because they send it to a PO box in Essex, which is quite difficult for anybody to realize that it's my PO box, at Simon Goldberg's PO box, right? Oh, okay. And then what do you do with it, Simon? So says the guy. And Simon says, well, then what I do is I post it all to the IRS, and I tell all my members that 30% of you are going to get something out of this. You're actually going to get a check back, and 70% of you are not. And I can't tell you whether you're one of the 30% or one of the 70%, but people are quite happy with that, because it's like you've got a 3 in 10 chance of getting something back. And the guy says to me, what are you doing? He said, do you have a 30% chance of your people getting something back? I say, no, we have 100% probability of our people getting their recoupments, because we're doing it completely compliantly with the law. And everybody should get their recoupments the way we do it, because it would be unlawful for them not to get it. And the guy says, oh, that's interesting. So, Simon, what do you charge people that get their recoupments back? And Simon says, well, we actually charge them 13% of what they get back if they actually get a check back. And all the people who don't get a check, what do you do with them? And Simon says, well, that's just the risk of the game, isn't it? If you pay for the process and don't get anything at all, you've just lost your money. And if you paid 13% of the check that you've got back, you can't get that back so easily, because we've got no mechanism to give you that back. And then the guy says to Ian Clifford, says to me, what do you do, Ian? Well, what we do is we file through a grantor trust, and we make sure it's lawful, because the grantor trust is the creditor, and there should be never any pushbacks on that. And we check it all out. We do all of our algorithmic search, and we find out how much tax is available. And we do it all through a professional trustee, and we've got bankers involved, so that when the recoupments come in, it's all received in the bank accounts belonging to the trust. And then we get the funds moved to the Asset Fortress protocol, and then we get our members to make a donation for our Freedom Plan, and then we recoup that donation back the next year, so it doesn't actually cost them anything at all. That's what we do. And then the guy says to Simon, so is what you're doing lawful, Simon? You don't have a license. You're filing from what appears to be the person, which is a debtor entity, and you're telling your members that only 30% of you are going to actually get a check and 70% are not. So what happens to the people who don't get a check? And Simon says, well, some of them get a frivolous filing penalty, like a $5,000 fine from the IRS. All right. And the guy says to Simon, what do you do about that? Well, it's not our problem, is it? It's the fine doesn't come to Simon Goldberg. The fine goes to the member. Well, they have to sort that out. Now, unfortunately for Simon Goldberg, he's actually admitted all of what I've just told you in witness statements, which I've got, because he's tried to sue people in his private criminal prosecutions, which he's doing numerous of them. And he's actually written all this down in his witness statements, exactly what he's doing and how he does it. And he actually has invented a character, which is an interesting one. He's invented a guy called Paul McDeeb, which is a fictional character from a movie, who allegedly is the tax filing expert. And Paul McDeeb has been named in witness statements in the High Courts, which is absolutely extraordinary to me, that a guy will admit to what's called RICO fraud, because you're defrauding the United States Treasury, and it's wire fraud as well. And he actually admit it in witness statement sent into the High Court in the United Kingdom. You can't make it up how stupid that is. You've actually admitted under oath that you're defrauding the United States Treasury in RICO fraud. RICO fraud means defrauding the Treasury and defrauding the United States government. And you're sending in the returns through the mail, which is then wire fraud. Now, the interesting thing is that I wrote all this down in a very deep forensic research report and sent it to Dan Needle early in February. And within 3 weeks of me sending that to him, Dan Needle's put a whole website together and put a whole disclosure and released it to all of his followers that Simon Goldberg's involved in RICO fraud and wire fraud and 1099 OID fraud, and breaks it all down. And yet he got it all from me. It's quite interesting, isn't it? So anyway, if you are a member of Empower the People, you may now realize that what Simon Goldberg's done for you has not really done you any favors. In fact, he could have put you in a great deal of problems. He could have brought a lot of problems to your door, because he's been reported to the IRS. Dan Needle has reported Simon Goldberg to the FCA and to the IRS for RICO fraud. And Dan Needle's got a massive presence. So it's only a matter of time, I think, before maybe Simon Goldberg gets arrested and taken to the United States and possibly put in jail. Next slide. And it's not a theory. You see, there's lots of people that have been jailed for doing 1099 OID filings exactly the way that Simon Goldberg's done it. In more recent years, Franzi Colico, which is a Canadian guy, was jailed for 9 years for doing exactly what Simon Goldberg has done. I wouldn't want to be in Simon Goldberg's shoes at the moment. Next slide. So the Clifford Protocol, I'm not going to read all of this. You've basically got a grantor trust, which is a creditor entity with a licensed tax preparer and a licensed trustee that is going to file, having already discovered the securities via their CUSIP numbers, having then checked everything out with the IRS system, and also negotiating with the IRS if there is an insufficient taxes on the 945 module to move those taxes to the 945 module as the holder in due course, because the grantor trust is the holder in due course, as it says in IRS publication 1212. It's then going to be filing a 1041 tax return, the grantor trustees, through the electronic licensed tax preparer to receive the funds in banks that have already checked all of this out from A through Z and opened the bank accounts. And there isn't any cost in the long run to this process, because any donation that's made is then recouped and spent and recouped and spent and recouped and spent and recouped every year. That's the Clifford Protocol. Next slide.
Wow, what an amazing presentation. I know for those who are joining us for the very first time, I'm sure your mind's blown away, but don't forget, this is recorded. It will be on the platform in the next few days, and you can go back and watch again. And of course, we have many members already who come and have seen our presentation before. So I hope this has given you a great refresher. But now we come to the top 7 questions. Ian, as you know, we've had a number of questions that have come through. Some we're going to answer now. I would imagine what the questions I've seen so far, majority of them have been answered as well. But people, please do not forget, there will be a form that I will be sending to all attendees today, where if you have any additional questions, please fill them out and they will be answered separately in a separate presentation with Ian and Andy Benson. So, Ian, are you ready?
I am.
Cool. So, question number 1. How does the Clifford Protocol specifically differentiate itself from the debtor-based 1099 OID schemes that led to criminal convictions in cases like United States versus Anderson and the sentencing of Francie Colico?
Well, it's all very much down to the fact that you can't file 1099 OID as a debtor. So if you're going to just send in a 1099 OID from the debtor entity of the birth certificate construct, then when the IRS receives that, and this is why people do it on paper, right? If that was filed electronically, it would be rejected straight away. And the tax filing professional would probably lose their license, because you can't file 1099 OID from the debtor entity of the birth certificate person, which is why people like Simon Goldberg file on paper. They send bits of paper in, the paper 1099 OID form, and they do it from an anonymous mailing address, so that there doesn't appear to be any way that the IRS can come back on it. And sometimes it gets, and there's a mistake made by the IRS, which is why only 30% of Goldberg's members of Empower the People get a check. It's all about the debtor versus the creditor. The creditor, which is the grantor trust, as confirmed by IRS publication 1212 and HDR 192, the nominee can file 1099 OID as the creditor with a professional trustee, with a tax preparer license, with complete and utter disclosure and no fear at all, because it's exactly how the system is designed to work. The difference is that one system, which is Goldberg's system, is amateur at best, fraudulent at worst, and the Clifford Protocol is 100% lawful and has figured out every single step forensically. That's the difference.
Thank you for that. Question number 2. What are the specific legal steps required for a living soul to move from status of agent and surety to that of a general executor over their decedent estate?
Well, that's a really good question. So the living man woman can't remove the agency completely and doesn't want to, but there is a tainted agency already in place. So I'll just do this. I'll do the short version of this because I've done this in a long interview, right? The living man woman is the agent for the body corporate, the birth certificate construct. So we've established that earlier, right? And you can go and research that yourself if you want to. Again, at Ecclesia Law, I've published a paper about the law of agency, right? It's all in there. Now, the living man woman can be the agent for the body corporate, the birth certificate construct, either lawfully or unlawfully. So what do I mean by that? All the time, the agent is saying that they are the birth certificate construct. So, for example, you use the passport, driving license, bank card, which is using the name of the birth certificate construct and holding out as if you are the birth certificate construct, which of course you're not. You're the agent for it. So all the time that you hold yourself out as the birth certificate construct, you are committing an identity fraud. If I said I'm Ian Clifford Stamp, which is the birth certificate my mum gave me years ago, I'm not that entity. That's a fraud, yeah? It's an identification fraud. But if I was to declare that Ian Clifford is the agent of the birth certificate construct and is not the birth certificate construct, then I've cleaned up that fraud, haven't I? Because I've made a declaration, I've cleaned it up. And if I then declare that Ian Clifford, the living man, is going to occupy the office of the general executor over the birth certificate construct of Ian Clifford Stamp, which is this artificial birth certificate entity, now I've made a declaration that I'm now occupying the office of the decedent Ian Clifford Stamp, the person. It's got to be a decedent, hasn't it? Because the birth certificate doesn't breathe. It doesn't, you can't talk to it. It's not alive. It's dead. So you become You occupy the office of the general executor. And the general executor is the executor of the estate, which is like a trust. It's under probate law. So you occupy that office. That's how you do it. And it's interesting. I was watching a program yesterday where they were talking about the office of the Queen when the Queen of England was alive, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, I wonder how many people watching this program actually know what the office of the Queen is. What is that? Is that like a Regis office? You have to rent it? What's going on with it? No, it's just a title. The office is just like a title on the Monopoly board. So you occupy it as a living, breathing man or woman, and you make declarations and you say that you are not using the name or anymore. You're the agent for the name on the birth certificate. You're not the birth certificate name. And that's how you do it.
Perfect. Spot on there. Thank you so much. Question 3. If the IRS algorithm 810 triggers a refund freeze on debtor-based filings, what forensic evidence does the Argent AI system provide to ensure a perfect match and bypass these automated gates?
Well, you see, before you file the 1099 OID, before the tax filing license holder files the 1099 OID, you've already checked out how much tax is on that tax module, the 945 tax module. So you're not going to try and recoup taxes that haven't been funded at the IRS. So it should never happen. There should never be a freeze if you do the homework and the AI system is tracking the taxes that each of the taxpayers, which is the investment banks, have paid. And if there is not enough tax on that tax module, that 945 tax module, the trustee is going to command the IRS to move sufficient taxes to the 945 tax module. So there should never be a freeze.
Okay, thank you for that. Question 4. Why is the appointment of a licensed electronic return originator, also known as an ERO, and the use of a 98 series EIN considered a mandatory jurisdictional rule for this process?
Well, that's, again, a really good question, right? So if you want to file tax returns with the IRS, you have to have a license to do it. You can't just start filing tax returns for somebody else or some other entity like a trust unless you've got a license to do it. And the software that you're using to file the tax returns is the IRS approved software. So you have to be approved and licensed by the IRS, and you have to use their approved software to file the tax returns. And if you don't do it lawfully, guess what's going to happen to your license? The IRS is going to cancel your license and probably prosecute you. So you see, the reason why we do it with an electronic reporting officer, a licensed tax preparer, is because we do it lawfully. If you want to do it, with cloak and dagger, you don't put your name on it. You send the IRS a paper-based tax return with the only name on it is the name of the taxpayer debtor entity. And then you can do it and you can pretend that you're not doing it because you've got Paul McDeeb doing it, which is a fictional character, and you think you're getting away with it. Well, you're not. That's, by the way, Simon Goldberg. So that's why you have a licensed tax preparer, because if you're going to do it lawfully from A through Z, why would you try and do it without a licensed tax filing entity doing it for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be crazy, wouldn't you, if you're trying to do it lawfully and you don't have a tax preparer with a license filing the tax returns?
Yeah, I agree. Question 5. How does the manual fiduciary command under Revenue Procedure 2002-26 legally compel the IRS to move overpayment credit from a bank's Form 1120 module to their Form 945 withholding module? And that was a little bit of a tongue twister and a mouthful there.
I can believe it. Well, you see, the Revenue Procedure 2002-26 basically is part of the Uniform Commercial Code, which says to you, if you understand what it's saying, which I do, that the 945 tax module is the priority tax module. Why? Because it's the tax module that belongs to the creditors, the creditor that created the signature energy in the first place. So the revenue procedure 200226 confirms that the 945 tax module is the priority tax module, the one with the most power behind it, the one with the most rights behind it. If it didn't have that standing, your trustee of your grantor trust wouldn't be able to command the IRS to move taxes from the other tax modules that they're paying. This is their corporate income tax modules. If it had no standing in the law to command the IRS to move the taxes over to the 945, then we'd have a big problem, wouldn't we? Because if the investment banks haven't paid much tax on the 945 module, that would significantly constrain how many of our members could recoup taxes in that year. It confirms in this revenue procedure 200226 that the taxes on the 945 module are the priority taxes.
Okay, thank you for that. Question 6. What is the contractual relationship between the Members Assets Fortress and the OSN Foundation in Panama? And how is the 20% contribution recouped in the following year's cycle?
Well, again, what a good question. Off the back of me publishing the OSN Foundation financing plan for the Republic of Old Souls Sovereign Nation, the relationship between the Members Asset Fortress and the OSN Foundation is a contractual relationship. So once all the members start to see their recoupment wages and tax transcript, there will be a contract that will be executed to ratify this. It's contractual, and it is basically, it's a donation to the OSN Foundation for the benefit of the creation of the nation. And it's, as I was explaining on an interview a few days ago, if you're going to set up a nation and you want to have a billion, multiple billions coming into it to finance its development and infrastructure, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to all of the people involved in the nation and say, I'll tell you what, I want you to pay 25% of your income to our nation, and if you don't, we're going to put you in jail? Or are you going to say, you can finance the nation, which is for your benefit because it's a freedom nation with all the infrastructure, by making a donation which you get back the next tax year? Which of those two do you think people will want? Don't think I need to answer that, do
I? No, not at all. Question 7. Since investment banks act as nominees and already remit these taxes to the US Treasury, why is the recoupment, not recruitment, but recoupment of this abandoned property described as having a natural impact on banks' own tax liability?
Well, the investment bank's tax liability is calculated by them, and they submit their taxes. They pay under the 945 module, they pay under other tax modules. So it's a neutral effect on the banks because they're already paying their taxes, as we saw on the slide earlier, the Morgan Stanley slide, 37 billion. They're already paying that every year anyway. So it's not like they're paying any more. It has a neutral effect because they're already paying it. All we're doing is moving taxes they've already paid to the Treasury into your grant or trust. We're not asking the banks to pay any more, as I mentioned in the previous slide. So it's a neutral effect because they're not having to pay more. We're just moving the taxes they've already paid into the grant or trust that is filed tax return as the creditor, as the holder in due course.
Lovely. And that is the end of all the questions. And as I said earlier, before I ask Ian these questions, I will be sending out a form to you. So keep an eye out on that. And if you have any additional questions, please add them in. You know, you may have more questions after what you've heard Ian saying today. So, you know, and that's going to be answered separately. So keep an eye out on that recording as well. So what I'm going to do, Ian, I'm going to, oh, sorry, go on, you carry on.
Just on that, for the last, I think 3, maybe 4 weeks now, lots of questions come in, and I go through them each one by one with Andy Benson on the ROS Media channel, and then we make those questions and answers available to all the members, and we also put it up. We've just started to put it up to all of our social media channels as well. So again, I'm not hiding anything here. This is all open source. All the information, all the answers to every single question are available. So if anybody writes me an email, which I've had one just recently saying, Ian, wouldn't it be good if you actually told people what you're doing? I think I was a little frustrated getting that email. It's like, really? So we put all of our Q&As out. We have webinars. We send emails out. We have a platform. What else do you want me to do? Come round your house and sit you down and have a coffee with you and tell you what I'm doing?
Don't know what to say.
Webinar rewards. If you are still watching this, and I can see a lot of people are, and if you think that you can help other people with this kind of knowledge, not just the knowledge, but the actual results from it, where you can transform the lives of other people using the Clifford protocol to do it, I want you to invite them to our webinars. And you don't have to send them an invitation in the post, or you don't have to go around their house and have a chat with them or anything like that. All you need to do is agree to getting our webinar invitation link. And at the moment, you can send it to people, or you can put it up on social media. But coming soon as we can organize this, there will be an automated webinar invitation process. Automated. All you have to do in going forward is agree that you're happy for the webinar invitation to be sent out through your social media channels, and it will happen automatically. So therefore, you don't have to do anything at all apart from agree that each time we run a webinar, that webinar invitation will go out through your social media channels. That's it. And anybody who attends the webinars, who stays for more than 70% of the webinar, if you are facilitating that webinar invitation, will receive a £10 a credit to your account, your webinar rewards account, that you can use to set off against any future protocols that we launch. And that's not just the Great Escape protocols. That is all the Freedom Plan protocols as well, of energy, of water, of health, of food, of communications, of travel, all of these other protocols which we're launching going forward. You will be able to set off your webinar reward points against them, against the donation cost of all those other protocols. And you don't have to do anything apart from agree to do it.
Okay.
And this is it. And I've done an interview on this on the Mel Clark Never Settle podcast in the last few, I think it went live 4 or 5 days ago. You can find it on Never Settle podcast, Mel Clark. I've done an interview with the ROS Media with Andy Benson, and I go into this in great detail. This is the reason I do this, guys. I don't do this because I'm looking to recoup my own credit, or I'm looking to charge people donations or fees or anything like this. I couldn't give a toss about that. I'm not doing it for Ian. I'm doing it for freedom, right? I'm doing it because I want to build a freedom nation. That is why I do this. 100% is why I sit here every day and work on this, and no other reason. So if you want to be part of a sovereign nation that has its own diplomatic passport, that has its own status as a sovereign nation, that has access to clean water, energy, natural food, all the things listed here, who else has got that plan to do this? I don't know anybody who's got this plan. I have a plan and we will achieve it. And it's what I've been working on from day one that most people have no idea about. And that's why I've been doing the interviews recently, because this is the reason why I do what I do. And this is the reason why everybody else in our organization is working on their individual part of the project, because this is what we're building, if you didn't already know. As I said on the interviews, I have built lots of algorithmic trading systems, and I don't need to charge anyone a fee to make money. And I never have charged anybody a fee, by the way, anyway, because Matrix Freedom was an unincorporated private members association without a bank account, so it couldn't charge anybody any fees. Ian Clifford never charged anybody, has ever charged anybody any fees, because I don't provide any of the members an individual service. And if you've paid any funds, you've paid it to a separate company, which was a member of Matrix Freedom, or it's now a member of the OSN Nation or the ROS Ecclesia as a donation to a ministry. And if I wanted to make money, why wouldn't I just recoup my own credit, which I can completely do with my eyes shut, and just do that? And the $4.4 million that I've showed on my videos that I put up on our Telegram channel, which is confirmed last year by the IRS, that was sabotaged, along with everybody else's, by Amy Sanger. So if I just wanted to make money, why don't I just recoup my own abandoned credit and not do all this and just have a life of luxury, because I figured out how to do abandoned credit recoupment? And the reason is because I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it for the Freedom Nation. And I hope that's clear. I really want to get this message out there, guys. This is why I do this.
100%. 100%, Ian.
Everybody, in my opinion, should, if they can get all of these protocols enrolled, if they can enroll into all these protocols, they should all be seeking to do this. They should all be focusing on getting the Envoy protocol, the Asset Fortress protocol, the Clifford protocol, which encompasses signature credit recoupment, infinite money, currency creation. And if they're running a business and they want to be private and they don't want to pay taxes and they want to multiply their revenues up and their cash flows up by spending and recouping their business revenue, then they should be doing the Commerce protocol. If everyone out there did all those four, if they had a business, it would transform their game of Monopoly. And then there is the if you're under pressure and you're under stress and you're being attacked by some other entity on the Monopoly board, there's the art of legal warfare, which I haven't spoken about here because it's not really related to the Freedom Plan.
I don't know if you noticed, Ian, I did show my plaque here, so I just thought it was very important to share that with everyone. And also I've got my ID card as well. So yeah, just want to share that with everyone.
Excellent. Next slide then. Okay, so if you are watching this or you know anybody who is a member of Empower the People and they are expecting to get back a check from the IRS and it hasn't come yet, or maybe it has come and they've already banked it, there is a significant risk for those people who are in that position, Empower the People members, because there is now a federal investigation going on into Simon Goldberg's admitted under oath witness statements that he has been committing RICO fraud and he's also committed wire fraud. And if you are one of those Empower the People members that are expecting a recoupment check to come in, it ain't going to come in, because there's a federal investigation into Simon Goldberg's unlawful acts. But if you still want your recoupments to come in, and you want to get way more than Simon Goldberg's method, then we are offering a credit note. So whatever you've paid to Empower the People in relation to this process that you've already done, we will give you a credit note equal to what you've already paid Empower the People. And then you can do the Clifford Protocol and get the results from it completely lawfully. And if you're not in that position, but you know somebody who is, I want you to tell them about this, because they could be drawn into a federal investigation. And they could be drawn into the problem with Simon Goldberg. It's a very, very serious problem that Simon's caused these people. There could be many, many people going to jail for this, in relation to this problem that Simon Goldberg has caused. And it's not a secret anymore, because Dan Needle's blown the whistle to the IRS and to the FCA about it. So it's no longer Simon Goldberg's dirty little secret. It's now out there in the public, and it's been notified to the IRS. So if you know anyone who's in this position, if you want to save them from problems, let them know about what we're doing, and we can get them out of those problems. We can cancel all the filings that Simon's done, and we can set the record straight and do it properly. Next slide.
I think that's a very kind offer. Very kind indeed.
If you want to book a consultation, then you click on this link. It opens up a web page, and then you can book a consultation. You can talk to our consultants about your questions that you've got about the Great Escape protocols. They're not going to give you any financial advice or legal advice or anything like that, but they are going to be able to answer your questions in relation to the Great Escape protocols. And the link will be, where will the link be, Sims? How would they get the link?
Well, as I mentioned, I will be sending an email out with lots of information, lots of links, which I mentioned earlier as well. So they will get that. So when they receive that and they want that one-to-one consultation, they click on the link. Just when you get to the page, just submit the email address that we have already on the platform. And what you have here, this is who your consultant is. So this is an example here. We have Paul Packer. So once you click on the link, you will see his diary, and it will have availability. Now, if for some reason his availability doesn't match your availability, but you wish to speak to someone, then no worries, because if you look right down here, it says can't find a suitable appointment. Click here to book an appointment with an alternative consultant. So you just click here, and here are the rest of the consultancy team as well. So we've got Kirsty, Julianne, and Emma. And it's simple as that. Just click on there and just look at their diaries, and it's available, and it's in real time. It's live as well. So click on that, what's suitable for you. And once you've confirmed that, it's all booked in as well. That's it. But I will send that link to them. So every attendee from today will receive a number of information, links, etc. So they have that as a reference for future as well.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing, and it's they're pretty well booked up, as you can imagine. But there will be, and it's not available now, but there will be because a lot of people are saying, you want 500,000 people in the sovereign nation. How are you going to get to that number? Well, there will be a opportunity to do a meeting online with an avatar. So that might sound a bit weird, but there's lots of AI capability now where you can actually have a meeting and have a discussion with an avatar that will answer all your questions, and then you can enroll into whatever you're wanting to do in our Great Escape protocols, and you don't have to wait for the availability of one of our consultants. So that's something that we're also working on. because a lot of people just want to ask a few questions and get on and do this. So we're going to make it even more easy for that to happen.
And as I also mentioned, as well as the previous link on the slide there, I will be sharing these links out as well. And I know you mentioned a number of interviews that you and Andy have done as well, which are on the Ross Media channels, but I shall include all that. So all our attendees today have a reference point and they can go back to and use at any time. So please ensure that email you receive today, just keep that safe. So you can go back at any time. Is there anything you'd like to add, Ian?
Well, just that there's lots of information on the Telegram channels. I'd love more people to join those channels. The links are here. And, you know, every day we're putting more and more information in there. I do little videos and updates on what's going on and something interesting to talk about. I do, you know, 3 or 4 a week, sometimes more. Little snippets of what's going on, what's happening. You know, you really need to join those Telegram channels to get access to this if you're interested in knowing what's going on. Many people have said, "Oh, Ian, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could get access to you and ask you a load of questions?" Well, I can't do that because there's so many members. But what I can do is I can record my little video updates and put them on the Telegram channel. And that's about the best I can do, because I just can't get involved in lots of individual conversations with thousands of members, because I'd never be able to work on all the rest of the stuff. So that's what I'm doing. If you want to know what's going on, come on the Telegram channels. There's 4. We just created a new one, which is all about the Freedom Plan. It's all about the sovereign nation, everything to do with it. We've got Ecclesia Law, where I'm doing all my technical analysis. We've got the Winning at Monopoly, which is all about the Great Escape protocols, and we've got the Equalizer, where I'm exposing rogue actors like Simon Goldberg, if you're interested in that.
Lovely, thank you. Handouts.
Yeah, handouts, which I think that these will be available. But I have to say, everything on this list is available at Ecclesia Law website, Ecclesia Law Institute, and it's all available. All of these are available on that website. Everything new that I'm writing goes up on that website. Again, I don't hide anything. Every bit of research I'm doing about what it is, how it works, why it works, is all on Ecclesia Law. Anybody can come and read that. It's open source.
Lovely. And again, you mentioned Ecclesia Law, which was the link that was on the previous slide, that will be shared as well. I know there's a lot of information that's being shared today, and sometimes it can be a wee bit overwhelming, but don't worry, rest assured you will get that email and you get all those links, so don't worry there.
Well, do you want to explain this?
Oh, so you or me? You know, I'm sure. So Ian just said probably about 5 minutes ago, when he has people, you know, who do speak to him, how are you going to achieve that number of 500,000? Well, this is where, you know, we've got our advocates. We've got hundreds and hundreds already as advocates, and who have made referrals. In fact, looking even at the data this morning, a lot of the referrals that have come in are actually for today's webinar as well. I speak to all different advocates from different walks of life. Some of them are referring just their friends and family. We have other advocates who have built up a large network. You could call them multi-level marketers or network marketers, affiliate marketers. And one of the things they love is they know we've been around for a very long time, and we will be around for the next number of years ahead of us as well. And what they like is some of them who've been involved in other products or services. Some of them have just, you know, the organization's been, you know, just around for 6, 12 or 18 months. And what they love is all the information that we have, the information that we share, the live webinars that we do on a week in, week out, plus, as Ian just described, he does an update, he uploads that onto all the Telegram groups. him along with Andy. They do a number of interviews. There's a lot of information here, and this is how we want to build up the nation. Now, Ian mentioned, even at the very beginning, this is limited really to 0.01% of the world population. And, the research Ian's done is 500,000 members. So our advocates are proactively referring their friends and their families. In fact, some, if we go back a couple of the slides, people weren't even advocates. They were just members going, look, people need to know about this information, have shared the link, but then at the same time have become advocates themselves, referred other members as well. And in fact, I had an example where I actually met someone this weekend with their referrals as well. And it all just started off by sharing that link. I actually go into a lot more details. I do weekly webinars. So obviously, this is not an advocate webinar. This is obviously what we're doing today, but I go into a lot more details. There's also, along with the credit that Ian had talked about when referring the webinar referral link, but there's also a remuneration side of things as well. Now, we have what is known as advocates. I love that name because it's not like, I'm an affiliate marketer. What I love about the word advocate, it's coming from the heart. It's something that you believe in. You're doing this yourself and you want to share with others as well. So as you can see, here is an example that even if you referred one member and just say their annual recoupment for 1 year was $250,000, then because there's a front-end remuneration and a back-end remuneration, that's the back-end remuneration. Now, you imagine that member that you referred are going to be recouping year in and year out. Now, you can imagine they're recouping, say, the next 5 years. That's what your total earnings potentially could be. Now, imagine if it was 5 members of your family, 5 friends, or 5 members of your network, and on and on and on. So this just gives you an example. But as I said, I do go into a lot more detail in my advocate training. Now, there are other affiliate marketers, as I said, network marketers that have very large networks, and they become then advocate originators. So here is just an example that if 5 of their advocates that they bring in, and each advocate refers 10 members, and as you can see, the potential earnings you have on each year. And bearing in mind, those advocates will also be going through the recoupment themselves, but also the advocates' referrals, those 10 members, will be recouping year in, year out. And this just gives you a conservative idea of the potential remuneration that is available to you. Ian, is there something you would like to add to that? Because I don't want to take up too much of people's time today. I do go into a lot more detail.
I remember a few years ago in London when people were marching and not happy about what was going on in the pandemic. There was about 1 million of them marching around in London on a number of different rallies. Those people that are aware and awake who want to get out of this system, but do it peacefully, this is the opportunity. So, share the information. All you've got to do is share the webinar. Just share the webinar link. That's all you've got to do. And we're going to make it so easy going forward that you don't even have to do anything apart from agree to have the link in your system, which will be an AI link, and it will distribute our media content out to your social media networks. So that's all you've got to do is just agree to that.
Yeah,
couldn't be any more.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head about peace. Doing it the peaceful way, and also I'm pretty excited about the AI side, which I will be sharing in my up and coming webinar very soon. So advocates, watch out for that email invite, because I'm pretty excited to share about what we're looking to do from an AI perspective as well. Very excited indeed. So if you have any additional questions, I will be sending an email out to you, which will include all the links that we talked about today, but also a form. So if you have any additional questions you would like to add, then please add those questions in, and just submit those details, and they will be answered in the next up and coming Q&A section with Ian and also with Andy as well. And, I appreciate everybody attending today, and including in that form that we'll be sharing, we would love to hear your feedback from today's webinar. What it does, it helps us to improve and create better sessions for you as well. So again, I will be emailing that out. So along with your questions, please add your feedback as well. And we will obviously see you very soon. But before we close, Ian, any final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thoughts are that Andy's been interviewing a number of the key department heads and others, mostly department heads, I think, so far, on ROS Media. So if you think it's just me and Sims that are doing all this, it's not. There's a lot more. There's a lot more infrastructure than that. It's a very large organisation that is doing many things all in parallel. We are bringing in a whole AI system, which I know a lot of people are going to raise their eyebrows at, but we're going to use the AI system to organise and roll out things in a much more efficient way than we've ever done it before. We're going to be using it for helping us do marketing and recruitment of new members. We're going to be using it internally to manage projects. All sorts of things are coming into play to enable us to scale up to 500,000, 500,000 members of the sovereign nation as envoys of the Republic of Old Souls. This is going to happen, guys. I've been working on this for years, and we would have been so much further ahead if there hadn't have been the sabotage event that happened in September last year. But it hasn't stopped us. It's just delayed us from getting to the point of launching the sovereign nation. I am desperate to get out and get involved in and do webinars on free energy, on health, on communications, on water, on food, all of those good things, which are all out there, and how we're going to bring them in and make them available to the membership. Andy and I will be doing the same. We'll be doing webinars, we'll be doing interviews, Sims will be presenting them. And instead of talking about monopoly, which is what I've been doing for 42 years, I want to talk about some other things. So help me do that and bring in some referrals. All you've got to do is share the webinar links. There's no cost, it's all open source, and let's get more and more people coming to these webinars.
100%. And if you want to know where your webinar referral links are, just log on either as a member or an advocate, and they're all there. And check later on this afternoon, because there could be a brand new referral link that you can share for next Saturday. And on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Have a wonderful weekend. So what I'm going to do, for those who are on StreamYard and on Facebook and YouTube, I'd like to say thank you to you. So have a wonderful weekend. So I'm now going to close this session. So thank you so much for attending. So I'm now closing that.